He waited at that bus stop every morning, rain or shine. Same time, same spot, same wheelchair. But that day, something changed. The driver looked him dead in the eyes and closed the doors in his face. Not once, not by accident, and not without witnesses. But what no one knew was that he had a hidden camera rolling the entire time. And what it captured, it didn't just go viral. It forced an entire city to confront its shame. This isn't just a story about a man being denied a ride. It's about being denied humanity, until one brave soul decided he'd had enough. Stick around till the end, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this hits you where it should. It was 6:42 a.m. Marcus was always early, not because he had somewhere urgent to be, but because life in a wheelchair had taught him one thing: if you weren't early, you were forgotten. His fingers were stiff from the cold, gripping the same worn gloves he used every morning. Across the street, the bakery was just unlocking its doors. A couple of teens with headphones brushed past him, eyes forward, ignoring his presence like he was part of the bench. The city bus rounded the corner, its headlights catching the puddles on the curb. Marcus straightened, readying himself. This was Route 32, the only bus that could take him downtown without needing a transfer. And it had a ramp. It was supposed to. As the bus slowed to a stop, Marcus turned slightly, his thumb reaching for the joystick on his chair, inching forward with practiced precision. He'd done this 1,000 times, but this time it was different. The bus doors stayed shut. Marcus waited. 5 seconds. 10. He looked up and saw the driver, a heavy-set man in his 50s, arms crossed over the wheel, eyes locked on him with something colder than indifference, contempt. Marcus lifted his hand, gesturing politely, a silent "I'm here." And the driver? He shook his head, subtle, dismissive, then turned his attention to the road. And just like that, the bus pulled away. No words, no explanation. No ramp, no warning. Just the sound of tires hissing through the puddles and the bitter silence it left behind. Marcus sat still. For a long moment, he didn't move. Not because he was shocked. No, this wasn't the first time. But it was the first time he felt humiliated. He wasn't alone at that stop. A young woman glanced at him, then away. A man in a suit tapped his phone, pretending not to notice. But someone across the street, at the bakery window, they saw. They stared. And Marcus knew something had shifted inside him. This wasn't about missing a ride. It was about being told, "You're not worth the stop." But what the driver didn't know, Marcus had been recording. A tiny, almost invisible lens was clipped to the edge of his wheelchair tray. Motion activated, synced to his phone, set to autosave to the cloud. And today, that camera caught everything. The next day, Marcus returned to the same spot. Not out of stubbornness, but because his options were limited. He didn't own a car. Paratransit was unreliable and always late. And cabs? Too expensive for someone living on disability checks. He waited again. 6:42 a.m. Same gloves, same chill in the air. Same bus. But this time, Marcus came prepared. Not just with the hidden camera, that was already rolling, but with resolve. If the driver tried it again, there would be no confusion. No "maybe he didn't see me," no misunderstanding. The bus slowed. Same driver. This time, the doors opened. The sound of the folding doors hissing apart made Marcus's heart jump. Was the man going to let him on after all? He started to move forward. And then, "Back it up," the driver barked. Marcus paused. "I need to get downtown," he said, calmly. The driver leaned out the door, his face twisted with irritation. "I don't have time for you this morning. The ramp's not working." Marcus looked at the side of the bus. The ADA-required ramp mechanism was there, clearly functional. No damage, no caution sign. "You're required to deploy it," Marcus said, voice steady. "It's the law," the driver scoffed. "Don't start with me. I'm not holding up my whole route because of you. There's another bus in 20 minutes. Passengers inside were starting to murmur. One woman near the front was staring directly at Marcus, visibly uncomfortable. "Please," Marcus tried again, quieter this time. "I've waited. I have the right to board." The driver leaned in closer, lowered his voice, but not enough. "People like you slow everything down. Maybe you should think twice before riding with the rest of us." And just like that, he pulled the lever, the doors folded shut. The bus roared off. Marcus didn't move, didn't cry, didn't scream. He just sat there, jaw clenched, pulse pounding. He didn't even notice the barista across the street, the same one from yesterday, step out from the bakery, arms crossed, watching the bus fade into the distance. He didn't know yet, but someone else had started recording too. What hurts more than being humiliated is knowing no one stepped in. As the bus vanished, Marcus slowly turned his chair away from the curb. He wasn't sure where to go. He felt exposed, like the whole street had seen him stripped of dignity, and no one offered him so much as a word. But he wasn't alone. Not really. There had been at least a dozen people waiting at that stop. Most were regulars, office workers, hospital staff, construction guys. People he saw every day but rarely spoke to. Now he saw them clearly. A man in a navy trench coat who had glanced up from his phone and then quickly backed down. A mother with a stroller who gave him a tight, guilty smile before turning away. The young woman with earbuds who hadn't moved at all, frozen, pretending nothing was happening. They weren't cruel. They were apathetic, or maybe afraid to get involved. But to Marcus, their silence was a second betrayal. He tried not to look bitter as he turned away, but inside, a part of him was crumbling. As he began rolling toward the alley that led back to his apartment, a voice called out, "Hey, man, wait." Marcus stopped. Turned out it was a kid, late teens, maybe early 20s. Hoodie, backpack, skateboard under one arm. "Was that guy serious?" he asked, jogging up. "He just left you." Marcus nodded, surprised anyone was speaking to him at all. The kid shook his head, wide-eyed. "Dude, that's messed up. I mean, that's gotta be, like, illegal or something." "It is," Marcus said. "But try proving it." Then something shifted in the kid's expression, from shock to curiosity. "You record that or something?" Marcus hesitated. "Yeah. Actually, I did." The kid whistled. "Yo, if you post that, people are gonna flip out." But Marcus knew better. He'd filed complaints before, sent emails, gotten silence in return. The system didn't care, unless the public did. And right now, the public was still asleep. But across the street, inside the bakery, a woman in an apron was also staring. Not with pity, but with purpose. She picked up her phone and tapped the screen. Faces were beginning to turn, and not all of them would look away this time. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He had rewatched the footage for times. Each time, it hurt more. The driver's face, smug, dismissive. The moment the doors shut, the subtle flinch in Marcus's body as the engine roared away. The audio was clear, the words unmistakable. "People like you slow everything down." He'd sent complaints before. He'd called customer service hotlines and left voicemails that were never returned. He'd written to the city's Department of Transportation, even CC'd a local council member once. Nothing. No call, no letter, no apology. The message was clear, they didn't care. So why would this time be any different? He looked down at the submit complaint form on the transit company's website. The same drop-down menus, the same blank box for incident description. He closed the tab. Instead, he clicked upload. Footage. Title. Description. But this time, he didn't send it to the transit board. He posted it publicly. Within minutes, it was live. At first, it sat unnoticed. 20 views. A couple of thumbs up. A comment that said, "That's messed up, man." Then, it started to move. The kid from the bus stop had shared it on Reddit. The bakery employee had tagged a local news station. And someone else, someone anonymous, had submitted it to a Facebook group called Transit Truths. In less than 2 hours, it passed 10,000 views. The comments flooded in. "Fire that driver. This is what disabled folks deal with every day. Shameful. How is this still happening in 2025? Marcus sat back overwhelmed. For the first time, they were listening. But deep down, Marcus knew views weren't enough. He wasn't looking for attention. He was looking for change. And to get that, the world needed to see more than one bad driver. They needed to see the system for what it really was. The story wasn't about one bus. It never was. Marcus had been documenting his rides and his rejections For months, quietly, carefully, not out of paranoia, but out of necessity. Ever since a driver pretended not to see him 3 months ago, leaving him stranded in the rain for over an hour, Marcus had started recording. Every ride, every stop, every refusal, every insult muttered under a breath. What started as a personal archive had grown into something more. His setup was simple but effective, a button-sized lens, clipped onto his tray, linked to a cloud account, activated by movement and sound. Every file timestamped, geolocated, and backed up. He wasn't just capturing events. He was gathering evidence. In one video, a driver tells him, "I'm not a babysitter." In another, the ramp is suddenly broken, but then deployed minutes later for a mother with a stroller. In yet another, a passenger grumbles, "Why don't they have their own buses?" No one challenges them. Not once. And now that the video had gone viral, people were asking questions. Real questions. Journalists began reaching out. Disability rights advocates started tagging city officials. A popular TikTok creator stitched Marcus's clip, angrily demanding accountability. The comment section exploded with personal stories from others, veterans, seniors, wheelchair users, all with similar experiences. Marcus watched it all unfold from the same kitchen table where he used to draft ignored emails. But now, the city was watching too, and so was the transit company. He received a message through his YouTube inbox. It was short, clipped, corporate. "We are aware of the incident. An internal review has been opened. We'll be in touch." That was it. No apology, no direct acknowledgement, just damage control. Marcus knew how these things worked. They'd isolate the driver, throw him under the bus, no pun intended, and pretend the problem was solved. But the problem wasn't a man. It was a mindset, and Marcus had hours of footage proving it. Next stop, exposure. By the third day, Marcus's inbox was a battlefield. Requests from news outlets, comments flooding in by the second, dozens of strangers sharing their own horror stories, some heart-wrenching, others enraging. His video had surpassed 2 million views, and it wasn't slowing down. It had landed on the front page of Reddit. CNN had clipped the footage in a morning segment. A trending hashtag started on Twitter. Hashtag let him ride suddenly. Marcus wasn't just the guy in the wheelchair. He was the man who caught the system breaking itself in real time, and had the receipts to prove it. That afternoon, he got a call. It was from Channel 7 News. "We'd like to do an interview. On camera." Tonight, Marcus hesitated. He never wanted to be a face for anything. He didn't want fame. He wanted freedom. The freedom to move like everyone else. To exist without being told he was inconvenient. But then he remembered every time he'd been left in the cold. Every time someone looked away. Every time he felt invisible. This was no longer about him. The interview aired at 7 p.m. sharp. Marcus sat in front of a bookshelf lined with old advocacy books, shoulders square, eyes clear. The reporter asked, "What do you hope to accomplish with this?" Marcus answered without blinking, "Change. Not for me. For everyone who's been pushed aside and told to wait for the next bus." The segment was clipped, shared, reposted, quoted. That night, he received a private message from someone who claimed to be a bus driver in another city. "They make us skip the ramps if we're behind schedule. No one says it officially, but we know. You're blowing the lid off something real." And another from a woman in a wheelchair. "I've been scared to speak up for years. Thank you for being brave enough for all of us." Marcus sat in silence after reading it. Not because he was proud, but because he finally felt seen. But as the praise rolled in, something else was stirring behind closed doors. The kind of silence that happens right before powerful people start scrambling. Public outrage had lit the fuse, but it was the journalists who threw gasoline on the fire. Within days, local investigative reporters began pulling threads. What started as a single video had become the tip of a much darker pattern. Records were requested, FOIA forms filed, and what they uncovered was damning. In the last 5 years, there had been over 300 formal complaints filed by disabled passengers against the city's public transit system. 82 involved ramp denials. 36 involved verbal abuse. Not a single one had resulted in disciplinary action. 0 suspensions. Zero firings. Zero reform. The driver from Marcus's video? His name was Donald Frick. He'd been reported 6 times prior, all for similar behavior. One report, dated just 8 months earlier, read, "Driver refused to deploy ramp. Passenger left stranded in rain." Driver said, "You people take too long." The investigation showed that Donald's file had been marked with a note, "Low priority," likely exaggeration. Worse, internal memos from the transit company revealed an unofficial policy. Drivers were encouraged to skip ramp deployment if running more than 3 minutes late, an unspoken tactic to keep routes efficient. The media ran wild with it. Headlines splashed across local news. Transit company accused of systemic discrimination. Driver with history of abuse still allowed on routes. City in crisis. How public transit failed the disabled. Protests began to form. Outside City Hall, dozens gathered with signs. "We pay to. Access is a right. I am not an inconvenience." And at the center of every news article, every blog post, every chant was Marcus. He hadn't asked for it. He didn't want to be the face of a movement. But now, he carried more than just his own story. Inside the transit board's office, panic was growing. Lawyers were being briefed. Emails were flying. And someone, somewhere, had just asked, "What's it going to take to make this go away?" Behind polished podiums and carefully worded statements, the rot was undeniable. The transit company's executives released a formal video address. The CEO, flanked by legal advisors, sat stiffly as he read from a teleprompter, "We are deeply sorry for the recent incident involving Mr. Marcus Reed. We are reviewing our policies and taking immediate action." He never looked directly at the camera, never said the words discrimination or abuse, and never mentioned the hundreds of other victims. Behind the scenes, real fear had set in. The Department of Justice had launched a preliminary inquiry. Civil rights attorneys were circling. The mayor's office issued a statement urging transparency and swift reform. But Marcus didn't need transparency. He needed truth. A whistleblower from inside the transit agency reached out anonymously. They provided documents, internal training manuals, email threads, shift logs, all confirming what Marcus had long suspected. There were unwritten rules, passed down verbally to new drivers. If you're late, you don't have time for the ramp. If they complain, say it's broken, don't argue. Just close the doors. One line in a supervisor's email stood out. "We can't accommodate everyone. Efficiency has to come first." That single sentence made headlines. It became the symbol of everything wrong with the system. On social media, people were furious. But Marcus, he was exhausted. He hadn't slept a full night in over a week. He barely left the apartment except for interviews and community forums. He was carrying the weight of a fight that should have never been his to fight alone. Still, he pressed forward, not out of ego, but out of duty. Because now he knew, if he stopped, the system would wait for the storm to pass, and then quietly go back to how things were. And that wasn't an option anymore. But while the city scrambled to protect its image, one official was about to do something unexpected, and Marcus would be the first to hear it. 3 weeks after the video went viral, Marcus received a call that felt different. It wasn't a news outlet, not a lawyer, not another advocate or angry citizen. It was a city official, Deputy Commissioner Laura Jensen, head of the Department of Transportation. Her tone wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't PR polished. It was human. "Mr. Reed," she said, "I watched your footage, every second of it, and I couldn't sleep afterward." Marcus didn't say anything at first. Then, slowly, "I've been living it for years. I haven't slept well in a long time." She asked if he'd be willing to meet, not for a photo op, not for a headline, but to help her understand what had really failed and how to fix it. Marcus agreed, cautiously. The meeting happened behind closed doors. No cameras, no reporters, just him, Jensen, a notepad, and a room full of uncomfortable truths. He told her everything about the ramp denials, the silent passengers, the dead-end complaint forms. He showed her the raw footage, hours of it. At one point, she wiped her eyes. At another, she just said quietly, "We failed you." But Marcus didn't want apologies. He wanted action. He laid out a list of demands, clear, direct, and non-negotiable, mandatory disability sensitivity training for all drivers, body cams in buses for accountability, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, real-time ramp deployment audits and public access to complaint data, and finally, a citizen advisory board with disabled riders at the table. She listened. She took notes. She didn't argue. At the end, she asked him one final question. Would you be willing to help lead this board? Marcus froze. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You don't need a face. You need a mirror. I'm not here to be your symbol. I'm here to make sure no one else gets shut out like I did." She nodded. He stood. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus left a government building feeling like someone had finally opened the door. But there was still one more stop to make. One final ride. And this time, the whole city would be watching. It was 6:42 a.m. again. Same time, same spot, but everything else was different. This time, Marcus wasn't alone. Reporters stood off to the side, cameras ready, but respectful. City officials watched quietly from a distance. And behind Marcus, a small crowd had gathered, wheelchair users, elderly riders, students, parents with strollers. People who had been told in 100 quiet ways, "You don't belong here." The bus rounded the corner, Route 32, but not the same driver. This time, the ramp deployed before the doors even opened, like it was supposed to. The driver, young, nervous, made eye contact with Marcus. "Good morning, sir," he said. "Need help with the ramp?" Marcus smiled, just slightly. "No," he said. "I've got it." He rolled forward, slow but steady. And for the first time in a long time, the wheels didn't stick. The door didn't shut. No one looked away. As he entered, people moved to make space. Not out of pity, out of respect. He positioned his chair in the designated spot and locked the brakes. Outside, applause rippled through the air. Not for the cameras, not for a viral moment, but because something real had shifted. Later that week, a press release confirmed it. The city had passed a new transit policy named after him, the Read Accessibility Act. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything. But it was a start. And Marcus, he didn't take the leadership position on the advisory board. He gave it to a young woman who'd once messaged him, "Because of your video, I finally spoke up to." That morning, as the bus pulled away, Marcus looked out the window, not at the crowd, not at the cameras, but at the empty bench where he used to wait alone. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a place of defeat. It felt like a beginning. How many others have been told, silently or directly, "You're not worth the stop"? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you believe access shouldn't be earned, it should be guaranteed, hit like, share this story, and make sure you're subscribed for more stories that matter.